everyone. Today we have Mr. Akshat Dahate. Akshat is a 2023 graduate and is currently working as an Assistant Legal Counsel at Tech Mahindra. During his time in law school, Akshat authored many academic pieces which were published in reputed law journals. And he has been kind enough to accept our invite and be here to guide our viewers on academic writing. Welcome, Akshat. It's great to have you here. I request you to please introduce yourself, after which we can begin with the session.
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me over and doing such a good, impeccable work, catering to different law students and other viewers, and hosting such interactive endeavors. So, coming to the part, thank you for the introduction again. My review of credentials indicate that I am a 23 pass out, as you stated, from ILS Law College, Pune, and currently working in in-house counsel at Tech Mahindra International Asia Pacific team. And I'm, of course, rooted with exploring different routes of law and always believe in writing so much, and academic writing is something which I always emphasize on. So that's something I like too much. And I think on non-academic side, I like to watch F1, play football, and that's something I really do.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Let us dive straight into the session now. Since college, you've been very consistent in writing. So can you share your journey into academic writing? So what was the first instant you started taking this incredibly important skill seriously and actually getting your article published?
Yeah. So starting again, it's a toil of different difficulties and understanding like throughout my law school journey. Firstly, when initially I came to ILS, the mobility was jumped directly from science backgrounds to certainly legal industry and legal implication of mindset, and around which I was bit clueless on how to focus on even how to start in a legal profession. Initially, of course, I had my mentors, my seniors who and professors who supported me, and of course, rooted for the ideology of being exploring different laws and mechanisms. And initially, in my second year, I got to pursue a course, diploma in corporate laws, where one of the partners who was the professor in that particular diploma in corporate laws specifically rooted for the understanding of article writing and all that, and giving importance to article writing, right? So that certainly, and seniors also in law school portrayed and mannered something that you can really explore different areas of laws by writing. So the diploma provided multiple melting points of laws and practice areas such as competition law, different spheres of law, which actually intrigued my curiosity to progress further and understand nuances of laws. So certainly triggered me. And then COVID happened, sitting alone at home, nothing to do. So I started writing a lot. And there was some article writing competitions which I pursued and tried to put my opinion all together. Stepping down to the internship perspectives, in my initial years, I stepped for doing multiple content writing internships, rather directly jumping to internships which caters clients and services like in legal industry. So I started doing legal content writing internships, which provided me a skill set and understanding of how I can progress with article writing. And after second year, when people are always rooted for doing internships in third year, fourth year, getting PPOs, I got one of the internships just because of my article writing. And that certainly hit me, and like the partner I met was also instigating on the same point of focusing on article writing. And every day I used to go to internship and I used to write an article. So that certainly fostered my habitual nature and understanding of writing articles in a speedy mechanism and also keeping all the loops in hand. Specifically, internships in this legal content writing space allows you to not think of multiple topic or pick choose one particular topic, but directly they want the one who will provide you the prompt. So someday you are working like writing a prompt or article on criminal law, someday you are writing on M&A, someday you are writing on IBC. So it cut across multiple sectors and practice areas of law, which provides you a bit broad understanding of how this laws could be potentially are and how the nature and scope of that law pursues. So that certainly instigates and segregates your clear understanding and interest towards that law. In a vertical chain, then I got to academic writing and all that, and then I had multiple publications, good fairs of publication, and my confidence certainly bringed up, actually paced up, because I was interning in one place, and which allowed me to write articles, and which got published in Mondaq, and I got ranked as a top 20 very popular author. So that certainly built my confidence. And of course, after writing all these articles, you have an interpretation of law, not in a very literal interpretation, but you also have rigid interpretation of law. And of course, there were failures, and of course, there was different difficulties and toiled with multiple problems. But yeah, I got through, and of course, that's one of the journey of academic writing. Yeah.
Right. So academic writing being such an important skill to possess as a law student, of course, there's many students who are interested in being fluent with academic writing, but are unable to do so or are unsure where to start, where to begin. So what advice do you have for students?
Okay. So very well narrated question, but it's very important. Again, getting back to the previous response I stated, of course, you have to set your goals very specifically. So understanding that and keeping the paramount of that, and of course, we can discuss that later also, the importance of article writing and academic writing in general. But one thing which initially, when you drop down to a law school, is that what to choose, which law to school, like choose. In second and first year, you might be very curious that, of course, we all hear this. Um, I have to go to corporate, I have to go to litigation, which field I should choose. And that's something which is not depending upon the broad understanding of corporate and litigation. There are multiple subsets and multiple practice of laws entered within the same. So for which you need to specifically find your interest areas. And for that, you really need to explore and start with article writing, which certainly helps you with the notion of understanding law, interpretation of law, and which is very essential centric for as a law student, especially sitting in initial years of law. Secondly, primarily focus on starts looking for a platform, such as I stated earlier also, which provides you a space to write multiple articles on different practice areas of law, right? So for example, if you do an internship at a legal content writing space, it will directly provide you a platform of getting it published also, but also getting understanding of different spheres of law. And that could potentially be done in initial years of law. Akin with the different competitions you can participate in. So that certainly puts you, I was always a student, like sometimes students generally need a write down a paper. Like I have primarily seen in different law school nowadays, they are keeping a very hand-on article writing. You have to write this research paper, and that will get you marks for internals and all that. So that certainly brings you towards the space of and force of writing. If you do a competition or some internal purposes, that's something which you put a standpoint on, then you can clearly move ahead. And potentially how you can start is, of course, having first thing interest and having a clear thesis and main point you're in. And of course, don't directly start and jump on towards without having an understanding of thorough research of that particular topic. Nowadays, I see people directly jump onto a topic which they find relevant and then start writing upon it. So it's not something which we really cater for. In initial you should have an understanding of not having understanding of getting it published, but you getting understanding of it. And that also something which I did. Potentially, I used to write articles and keep that articles, if they are not going to be published, as a notes to me for getting it under my notes and getting some use of it, right? So you should have that. So first have a clear starting point of clear thesis and main point on what you are writing on, with your, of course, keeping a hand and loop on your interest, thorough research. And of course, it should cover one primary thing, which is clear and conscious language with anecdotes of different examples. And if you pointing a particular opinion, you should have support, evidentiary support. And of course, you have to keep a different opinions. And of course, we can discuss that later again. And one thing which you have to keep in mind, that when you are writing something and which you really want to get it published, you should always look for the target audience. And it should be the particular piece should be articulated in the same parlance as people who are reading it, the readers, are not really aware about the same, right? And if they are aware about the same, they should look and read it in a perspective that this is something which is very not traditionally bookish in language. or this is not something which we have already read upon. So that should be ideal understanding, and it should be packed with your thoughts and parcel to public. And as a student of law, as an author, you are in the driver's seat, and you decide where you substantially have to go. So that's something which is important to keep in mind. Yeah.
Right. So talking on the same lines regarding topic selection, like you said, it's definitely gives you an upper edge if you select a topic that has not been written about before.
Just give me a second.
Right. So adding to what you said on the same lines regarding topic selection, what you said, it definitely gives you an upper edge if you select a topic that has not been written about much before. So the topic selection obviously becomes a very important part of your writing journey. How do you typically select topics for your academic writing projects, and what parameters do we need to consider while selecting topics?
Okay. So understanding should be that relevancy of topic should be promptly understood. Okay, so I think LinkedIn is a very essential tool to opt for. So if you are proactively on LinkedIn, you will see different opinions and articles, and if there is a draft bill coming through, the pictures from Parliament or whatsoever, so that certainly puts, it's very a proactive social media page where uh, it directly touch you and gives you the platform where you can be legally aware of different hot topics in the industry, right? There are multiple publications house also where you can go and search and get the relevant topics on board where you can potentially write on, right? So finding the relevant topic is of course is very important, but you also need to understand that finding the relevant topic is okay, but finding your interest in law, in that particular law, and if that particular law and if that particular draft bill comes into picture, what is the unsettled topic there, what is the contemporary issue there, that should be particularly looked upon, rather having a very bookish understanding to go forward with the same, right? Moving forward with how to choose topics for the convenience of the viewers, there are multiple blog pages, established blog pages, which serves prompts to write upon. So they are the some, they basically publish on their LinkedIn page, as I said. They every day or so, every week or so, they get all these prompts and research topics to write on, and students can of course check that and of course cater to that, and of course write an article further ahead if they want to, right? Finding of course your interest in that particular law, finding that is okay. And again, if you are interested in that particular article writing, or you really like the prompt, you should also understand the intersection of that particular laws with different laws altogether. So if someday data protection act comes into picture, what is the interface with AI, with the interface with competition law or other matters for it? So that is something which is very important. Of course, you have to also keep the implications of legal industry, like what you are catering to, right? So if you are creating to a client per se, if you are doing a freelancing and there is a client mechanism, so of course the topics will be given by the client and then you have to pursue ahead. Or there is a particular sector agnostic study has came, or particular notions has been passed by the government of India, then you can pick that particular thing and write upon. The most convenient thing here is that if the Supreme Court or courts of India certainly pass any judgment. So case study or case note is something which is very essential to, you can also have a understanding of that particular case, understanding of that particular subject matter, and then move forward with writing that particular case note. So that is something which directly brings down to you as a topic to write on, right? So for example, if a case came and then you find that case particularly interesting, then it automatically becomes a topic to write on. And then providing that, for example, if a particular court sets a law and then you have a different opinion, then of course you can cater to that opinion and provide that opinion to different readers and all that. There are amendments coming all the way. It's reading amendments nowadays, and of course the March ending and everything. So you can of course pick that amendment into pictures and then write articles. So there are multiple ways, of course, to select topics. And of course, keeping all this in loop, you can definitely have a decisive understanding of how to write, or like on what topic you really need to write on. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what is your opinion on the quality and quantity in which you're producing articles? And how much does the reputation of the journal in which you're trying to publish your article in matter? And what all factors do you consider when choosing a journal to submit your article to?
Okay, so it's a very essential question to focus on, like how you choose your journal. It's very important in nature. So, of course, the practice area and interest, without a say, comes to the first priority. And you really need to understand the expectation of that publication house, right? So, if you write a paper, for example, and you submit it in different publications house without knowing the expectation of that publication house, is it a specific practice agnostic or sector agnostic publication house that you have to find. For example, there are multiple publications house who are just centric about one particular law. And if you submit, for example, this particular publication house is about technology law, and you're coming with criminal law paper to submit, that does not make any sense, right? Of course, then you have to, this is something which is very crucial and which I have personally noticed by different law students pursuing the same practice. Uh, of second thing, the expectation point, you need to understand the different guidelines of that publication house, right? So the guidelines differs from one publication to another. One may have Oxford formatting, one may have hyperlink format. Formatting differs a lot. So if you are writing a public article and you are settled and done with writing that particular piece, and you are submitting to a publication who does not accept hyperlink citations, so automatically your
Right.
article or research paper get rejected, right?
Mhm.
So you need to understand the expectation. Some journals are only based on call for invitation. We often find uh, post about call for blogs or call for paper. And for example, I have chosen topic to write upon, for example, uh, technology law, right? And that particular call for paper was about compounding IBC or some different spheres of IBC. So if you submit that particular thing all together, it does not create a embracing opportunity for you, right? And it also wastes your time and the publication house as well, right? So that is something which is very crucial to find out. If there are only invitation basis metrics, so you need to understand that and pursue that in a manner. And following the guidelines, following the expectation, practice area, then you have to submit your article or piece of paper to that journal. And finding it is very easy. People are very confused nowadays to how to certainly find a journal. If you click all the tabs correctly, right, you will automatically find a journal. There, go and search competition law journal, you will find 10 journal, not even specifically in India, for international spaces like Oxford blogs, which accept certainly all this publications from Indian law students as well. So it of course caters to multiple spheres of law. So that's something which we necessarily need to keep in mind. Yeah.
Right. So,
Also, one thing I
right.
think I missed about, sorry.
Yes, please, please.
Yeah, while you are submitting to the journal, one thing which is a very prerequisite is that the target audience of that particular journal. So the target audience differs from one place to another, right? One publication to another. One publication house may only have restrictive students viewers, right? Students readers, right? So if you submit a paper which is based on legal professionals, right? That is something which is very diverse in nature, right? It does not. And if you go, for example, just simplifying things here, for example, one particular journal is about client interface, right? Multiple partners from different law firms and in-house are writing on that particular. The main motive of and scope of that particular journal is to provide and cater to clients. Of course, some students and associates are allowed to provide that inputs and write upon that. So if you are catering to that particular client space, your writing and expectation and scope of article change. Students, the article and flow, language, everything certainly changes. So identification of categorically understanding the sphere of that particular journal and is very important. So that should be looked upon. Yeah.
Right. I was saying academic writing is usually hard for law students to approach because it is draining, if I can say that, and it also takes a lot of effort. And it is hard to stay at the article till the very end. So, what strategies do you use to stay motivated and maintain a consistency in your writing?
Okay, so right. I think once you understand the importance of article writing and understanding how you can leverage it all together, certainly keeps you motivating and finding right directions about topics and maintaining that consistency all together, right? So, putting all the pictures into hand and collectively understanding the importance of article writing or academic writing, as you say, uh, some important points always keeps, for me at least, this was the case scenario where I found article writing to be firstly a very fun activity. Like my peers used to come and of course talk to about this hot topics in law school. And you really have a time to just discuss that. You go to canteen and someday you are just discussing about something else other than gossips and all that. But sometimes you really need to push that and of course have that understanding all together. And that's something for me, it was bit of understanding of just having that intellectual understanding and having some sort of motivation towards the same. So, getting to the important points and which keeps you motivated all through. And first being is that when you became a intern per se, right, or associate, as a standing A0 in a law firm, or even standing as A2, A3 in a law firm, or even as intern, you are expected. I have seen multiple law firms, tier one law firms, asking an intern to write an article, right? Especially, I have maintained that understanding from different associates and senior associates that while they were writing articles, they had multiple uh, notions of work allotment differently from article writing, right? So they still have that work going, right? And simultaneously, they have that article to be done, right? To cater to clients. So it's very important to understand the importance here is that when you also become an associate in that very minute time frame, keeping all the bandwidth in hand to write article. So this should directly not will, of course, this will not picturize and come handy in day or so, right? So from initially only you have to bring that up and start pursuing the same academic writing because that is expected from you when you start your journey as a professional, right? So this is one thing which is very important. And as an intern also, if you write your articles, that certainly embraces your chances of having an opinion and sharing your opinion with the partner or with the associate, right? This is one particular thing. Second, from PPO perspective, diving through my personal experience and recruiters all over and a cumulative feedback from my, of course, associates. I have also understood that in PPO scenarios, one time what happened, one of the partner started arguing about start asking my opinion about that particular piece of paper wrote about. And that had happened with multiple law students while not sitting for interviews in PPO or even in 0 days, and that has particularly happened, right? So it also helps you in placements and recruitment mechanisms, right? And initially, of course, it helps you to interpret law not in a literal way, but also in a rigid way. Third, I think also pushes you, if I'm keeping the chronology right, subject matter interest is also embraced by this particular thing, article writing. Also, it's a very good career option. If you know, legal journalism has really pushed away. Freelancing has came into picture. I personally, I when I was in law student, I used to spare some money by writing articles and providing all these notes to different people. So that certainly helped to me to understand the different certainly kept me personally motivating. And of course, always believed in researching a lot. So it used to directly put me to in touch with the sectoral regulator, not in a more incumbent way, but in a more uh, persuasive way to just have a connection with that particular sector. For example, if I'm writing on IT sector, I will have a bit backdrop of IT sector, and that puts me in connection with that sector for some time frame, right?
Right.
Uh, Another thing I would like to suggest here is that which keeps me motivating. I don't know about the readers, but that's something which I can say that pushes you across. But it also helps you to write down your LLM applications.
Right.
This is something very, very crucial in international students and law schools. Uh, my friend I have seen also was very intrigued for submitting an NLM application, and he got selected just based on some, of course, other nuances were also involved, and this helped him, right? Also, I think networking is very professional nowadays, and it has become bread and butter in this legal industry, of course. So from day one, nowadays, not from professional side, but from law student side is also very crucial nowadays, right? So catering to the legal community and becoming like making it as a habit to curb as a better lawyer, always keep like I think kept me motivating, and I think it will keep motivating other people, considering the paramount importance settled by different notions of yeah.
Right. So, Akshat, you are currently working full time and still writing. Just a week back, I believe I saw your article published on Taxman. So, can you share any techniques for managing time effectively between professional responsibilities in your case, or college for college students, the college hours and academic writing? How do you manage time effectively?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to ask, but yeah, and actually to respond because this is something which is I'm still figuring out and how to pursue that and keep my energy. But as I stated earlier, all the important paramount of or writing a legal article uh, is actually brings energy to me and motivation to me, considering all that importance settled before by me. Considering that you need to really shape and spare time for it, of course, this will not come in handy. Uh, Nowadays, you need to set your own timeline. So, for example, if you are start initially when you start writing, it will not be something which will be uh, completed in one day also. Like so, initially you have to really keep for example you need to start researching first, so thorough research is required. So 1 or 2 day for if you're writing an article specifically. So from other perspectives, like if you have to writing a research paper, so that requires a different research mechanism altogether. It should be very thorough and extensive in nature. So for example, if you're writing an article, so the time frame you should first keep is to just merely read different perspectives, right? And different already existing narrations and articles provided by different publications. So 1 day, of course, you have to 1 or 2 days, of course, you have to keep a track of your time, considering it, and it will not be something. For example, my college used to get ended around lectures used to get end around 4 in my initial years. So after that, you can go chill for some time and then at least spare 1 hour or so just read upon one article, which barely takes 10 minutes to pursue that. And I think in initial years, we can spare that much of time, right? And you need to understand that in initial years, you at least have some space and time comparatively to a third year, fourth year. In third year, you are trying to get all the tier one internships on board. In fourth year, you are trying to just get like in after second sem or like initially also in first sem of fourth year, you directly jump on 0 days placement preparations and everything all together. So you really don't have time at that particular space, right? In third and fourth year necessarily. So in initial years, of course, you have at least that time, and you need to prioritize that essentially by prioritizing this also and other extracurricular activities as well. So it's more holistic nature to understand that this is also important. Like it is also important, and it is very settled principle that article writing, of course, people may have different views, but this is something very crucial when it comes to your academic achievements and fulfillment. So, of course, if you take a day or so or prepare your timelines accordingly, maybe not 1 day you can write an article, but at least in 5 days, 6 days, following short spans of giving time frame to it will necessarily help you. And after some time, when you consummate all the understanding and framework of how to writing very efficiently, trust me, my I was very confused initially, and it used to take around 10 days to write an article. But when I told about the internship where I used to go and write every day one article, right, which essentially held my speedy writing of that article, right? So that helps you, and after some time you can directly write an article within 1 or 2 days. I have seen my peers writing article in 4 hours or so, right? With extensive, of course, extensive research keeping in mind. They just sit and just start writing, right? So this is something which will not come in handy in 1 day or so, but of course it will essentially take time. And of course it will take your personal time and capabilities of taking and sparing some time for article writing. Essentially, one important thing which we need to keep in mind is that when you become associate or in in-house, you are asked to uh, write articles in different. So, for example, this amendment came, so you have to partners and our senior counsel will force you to not force you, of course, you're doing the work, but ask you to write, but you don't have the bandwidth. So, how you will manage it? So, the time management essentially becomes very important, and question of time in that particular short period of time you have to write that article, because you will see an amendment coming in after 1 hour or so. It's backing up with multiple, it's flooded with multiple articles around the same. So that is something very crucial in nature, and that particular time frame, in that short period of time frame, you have to write an article, right? So that is something which is very important, and that comes with professional responsibilities and having a habitual understanding of how to write articles. So the time gap, for example, for initial years may be bit extensive, but initially when you grow and nourish your habit of writing, it automatically cut down and will be a more helpful for you in future. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it happens with me personally. Most of the time, I start
Okay.
researching about a topic and I cannot stop, or I don't feel I know enough. And by the time I think I have researched enough, I'm no more interested in writing about it. So, how do you approach the research process in the most efficient manner, in a way that you read and write simultaneously without missing out on either one of them?
Okay. So that's something which also happened with me, by the way. So multiple time I started writing up on one thing, and then I was clueless and I was not very interested or not in a mood to write, considering the yeah. So it's very important at initial stage to, of course, identify the problem. Of course, identify the topic. If you really don't have that understanding of that topic, so for example, if a amendment to patents, hypothetical example, Patents Act comes today, right? And I was like, okay, it's a prompt given by one of the top publication houses. I will write upon it. But do I have the understanding towards the same? Do I have a sectoral understanding towards that field? Legal implications, interpretation. For example, I may not have that understanding, right? And but I start writing upon the same. So am I correctfully selecting a problem or prompt which I really want to write, but already existing one? So that's something which the question comes into picture of how relevant that topic is in that particular uh, space and time, considering it may be a hot topic, but for you also, if is it required, is it really interest you, or you have that understanding. And if you don't have that understanding of identifying the cause, identifying that interpretation, you will start writing and be blank after some time, and then you will be like, okay, after 500 words I'm okay, I will go back and stop writing, right? So that certainly helps you to nourish. If you're choosing a very, for me it was competition law. I Whenever I used to write upon competition law, automatically it used to get me intrigued about that process, get me intrigued about that particular subject matter. If I'm writing on technology law, I was of course very interested and diverse towards what will happen next, and this amendment will come into picture, that will happen. And of course you have to be updated about all these things. And if you are not and directly jumping to this particular selection of topic without having a backdrop of the same, you will flourish that and you will be bit blank. So the preview process, first and initial stage, is that identifying the correct relevant topic. Second, having a thorough research about that particular topic, right? And if you have that thorough research, automatically certain questions come into your mindset, and you're walking someday and it will hit you, okay, this could be potentially wrong, this could be a right or wrong thing, this could be black and white, and this could be a gray area to talk about, right? So this is something very important to design and choose wisely. Okay. Once you have that everything and understanding, don't start directly writing upon that. So for example, I give an example about patents. So don't start directly writing about introduction to patent, right? Structure your whole article before starting to write in your mind or maybe in a pen or paper format or wherever. So that's something very important to keep in mind, right? Then collectively collect all the data, collectively collect all the decisional practices, case laws, everything, and have that process and analyzing understanding to start with. And once you start writing upon it, the formulation of your articles automatically comes into picture. And with a wise structure, there is always a wise article. Yeah.
Right. Could you share any particularly challenging experience that you faced during your writing process, and of course, on how you overcame it?
Yeah, there were actually toil of different difficulties I faced. Personally, keeping all the rejections in hand and multiple nuances where you actually misunderstood or misinterpret some laws, and then collectively getting the feedback and potentially correcting it. So that is something which was first thing I noticed when I started writing. And what I also nourished and understand that one difficulty I certainly face is that it's bit deep. Like nowadays, publication houses are flourished with multiple submissions of blogs and articles, right? So the process has become very stagnant and bit of delay is expected when you submit an article.
Right.
And preempting to that, that relevancy of the topic may be gone after some time till the date the article gets published or even gets selected for a second tier review process or something like that. So one thing I have faced is some sort of delay in the process, and that could be potentially improved. But we also need to understand the bandwidth, the members of that editorial publication team, and all the nuances, and respect that and understand why there is a delay and take correct follow-ups for the same. So there is already provided. So there are regulatory bodies which are also publishing different articles. They have stagnantly kept a 4 months process of review. So if you understand that, you are expected to expect that delay, right? So you can't complain about it. There are publication house which gives the feedback in 2 or 3 days, right? So there are delay process, but there are other publications house also which certainly promotes all these things and are very prominent in all these activities. Uh, One of the personal things which happened with me while in a tier two process. So my article got shortlisted, and then in the tier two process, there was an associate who was the part of the editorial team and tried to undermine the submission of my article because uh, the associate thought this interpretation was certainly wrong, but keeping all the analysis and all that. Uh, so I thought this was something which I really thoroughly researched upon, backed with all the evidences and understanding towards that particular interpretation or challenge which I was and which I mentioned in that article, right? So I actually reported to the editorial team, tried to explain my point, tried to explain that point to the respective associate, and then they got to know about it, and then they expected the change. And initially that was a problem which I faced. Then sometimes you go too creative while formulating an argument, right? So based on that, there are settled rules which we can follow, right? So not all publication houses are subject to accepting a challenge which you are, like for example, if you are pointing out at a particular case pointed by a Supreme Court and you have a different opinion, right? And that particular editorial team may not be okay. If you are pointing out at the regulator, the team might not be okay to accept it. And I think that's okay. But from that perspective, I learned how to keep a very nuanced and balanced opinion sometimes, and need to understand the target audience and then submit a blog therein. So this was like few difficulties and points which I faced. Yeah.
So you mentioned about handling rejections. So how do you handle rejections, or if your article does not get published, and what steps do you take to improve and move forward with it?
Yeah, so I think in the right sphere, you need to understand that you need to actually absorb the feedback which you have received and certainly exchange it with the potential scope of improvement, right? So, of course, there is a saying which we always say, like, rejection always reflects a scope of improvement, and that should be always kept in a most positive way. And sometimes you write, as I mentioned, all these difficulties which I potentially faced, and I actually learned a lot about it. Like, if there was a chance and I would have believed that my interpretation was certainly wrong and not comment on it and challenge it. So that could have lead to me getting a bit undermined about the same, right? So you have to understand that. And in the same notion, you also need to understand the expectations of different publication house. So sometimes you write an article and that publication house has a totally different explanations and exceptionally remarkable understanding towards that particular framework, or sometimes they don't have that understanding. And for example, the expectations are very different in nature. For a publication house, as I said, you are submitting altogether a different notion and article which they don't follow and pursue by their settled guidelines. If you submit your article, it will not get published because the expectations and foreset guidelines are very different in nature, right? So you can of course explore different outlets and different publication house and try to get publication there after completion of the time period of that review process, right? So in case, but of course, not all publication houses provide you feedback where they will provide you maybe a rejection mail or this article is not get selected, and that's okay. But also one thing is very important to keep in mind is the feedback. Once you write that article, it's not something which will potentially waste your time. It will always increase and potentially fulfill your understanding of law, right? So it's not something it's going to waste, right? And in case the feedback is not provided by that particular publication house, you can always ask for inputs from your peers and then read upon it and get real-time feedback from your peers without filter and whatsoever. And that will certainly help you to nourish your articles further. So always take, I think I always personally took all these rejections to improve and take it as a scope of improvement. Yeah.
Right. Lastly, in your experience, what are the most common mistakes that aspiring writers make, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah. So nowadays I have accumulatively understood some things which from common feedback from law students, but of course not generalizing it and just keeping that in loop. I think common mistakes that should be certainly avoided, and they are some problems to the legal fraternity also. Maybe a potential problem or not, but that should be particularly lined up very well, right? So nowadays, I see law students are more concerned about plagiarism or AI caution, right? I see students rather focusing on novelty and creative thinking outside the box, or even interpretation of that subject matter or that particular hot topic. But they are more caution about and careful about plagiarism and AI, because what they are doing here is that they are just taking, uh, paraphrasing some already pre-existing ideas and keeping all the novelty and creative ideas ousted. So if you like you don't think outside the box and put your novelty into picture and be careful about plagiarism and AI in a good publication house, uh, that the plagiarism might be zero, AI caution may be zero, but novelty will be also be zero, and that will certainly trigger the established publications, and then that will be subject to rejection maybe, right? So that is something very important to keep in mind. Secondly, choosing for a topic to write on and not sitting blank. So if you have free time and you don't have any substantial topic to write on, right? So just to create a habit of writing, if you have some free time, spare a random topic from prompts and all these things I mentioned above. Uh, so what you can do is that write a brief about it, or try to keep yourself updated about the things and improve your writing skills, and that will potentially help you. But this is very something which laws certainly kick out and don't certainly So this particular point should rather be avoided by law students, and this particular point should be pursued by law students, rather not keeping that in loop, right? Uh, I think having common understanding of subject matter is crucially important, right? As I said earlier, for example, if you are writing on competition law or technology law or company law, for a matter of fact, in fact, in any law you write on, like should have the basic understanding, interpretation, understanding, decisional practices, case laws in that particular field of law or subject matter should be very clear from starting point, right? If you directly jump on into it, it will not be a very uh, effective and analytical block altogether, right? So you have to keep this in mind, right? Don't directly jump and say, okay, I will start writing upon this and let's see how that laws goes, right? This is not something, or this article flow goes, right? So this is something which should be definitely avoided, right? Uh, Having no substantive research, right? The first paramount of starting a prerequisite to start a article writing process is to substantively understand and research upon it, right? And what people are nowadays doing, especially law students, they get an article from a top publication house, take that article, uh, just research widely and broadly on that particular spaces, paraphrase it, and then this is not substantially researched to my understanding. You need to take your time, you need to understand the subject matter and then start writing. Moving further, coupled with structure of article is also very, very essential. So if you don't have a flow of that article, you will not be, that will certainly lead to more ambiguity and complexity in this particular article, right? Uh, Other thing which we need to keep in mind is that you need to understand the target audience. So as I said earlier, target audience may be differing from student, legal professional, clients. So based on that, your article should mold and shape your article, meaning the language and tone of article actually differs from places and what we are catering to, right? So if you are catering to a client, the tone of the article should be, of course, from a very layman understanding and very client oriented, which we see on multiple law firm pages, very short cutted articles. But if you are writing for a competition or a research paper and that is subject to 5,000 words, you cannot, you have to put all the languages, legal jargons and pictures and not to of course, you have to simplify when it's coming to clients, you have to simplify when it's coming to legal professional or research paper. But the complexity of legal terminologies increases when you are certainly formulating or writing that particular article to a competition or to submitting for a legal professional matter or something like that. But if you are doing for a client, so differing from different clients spaces and ideologies, you have to shape and mold your article based on the target audience, and people often forget that, and students submit their article to a publication house covering almost all the difficulties and complexities of law, and that is going to a client space, and client will come back and say, okay, this is not something which I understand, please explain me. So this certainly puts something, and which is very essentially centric to understand the target audience which you are catering to. Indulging in This is something which have recently noticed, that indulging in multiple wrongful practices, I don't know if I can call it a wrongful practice, but where students submit their article for, like, for public, like, for, of course, for publication purposes, but they submit it to multiple publications house at the same time, right?
Right.
And consent for not giving, yeah, so consent for not giving it to other publications house, right? At this juncture, it's not wrong to say that uh, to everyone wants their article to be published in well established or recognized publication houses, right? But often forgets the value and establishment of that particular publication house. And if you submit your article to that particular publication house at your will, right? But the reality is quite the opposite. It does not work as you want, right? Meaning, while you choose a publication for like a journal or a publication place, uh, the pre-requirement and prerequisite before you even start an article is that, of course, the relevant topic, finding the parallel with the publication house. So if today a law comes and I start writing that article after 1 month, right? And then think this is a relevant topic. Does not work like that, right? Because you have to think and be very clear that there are already existing 10 publications on the same topic in the same publication house, right? So this is something which you should avoid. So, for example, if you submit an article and there is a process of, I bit digressed a bit, but if you submit to multiple places, the problem is you may potentially get blacklisted because, for example, two publications house has the same time frame to govern with and review process with. So what if it gets selected in both the places, right? So you might be getting blacklisted, and of course you have to choose one, right? So randomly submitting 10 publications to 10 publication houses without having the backdrop and understanding and of all these conditions that this should be subject to the expectations of that publication house. And a thing they need to fear is that if you get blacklisted for that publication house, and there are very limited publications house in India, so that should be very cut across. So that is something which should be avoided by all the law students or even professionals. Coming to the citation points, citations differs, of course, from different places, publications house altogether. So citations need to be kept upon. Uh, I think to cover all those things up, students nowadays does not like do not believe in coming. I don't know. Of course, this is not a generic statement. It differs, but you need to bring down your perspective ahead rather following already existing perspectives, right? So if, for example, Supreme Court passes a judgment or there is a new law, you should take your opinion, like you should pick your side, right? So for example, and often law students go, for example, if they go to well established law firm or oriented publication house where things are not very uh, opinionated, right? Of course there are opinions, but major law firms or in-house counsel portrays their opinions to be in a very bookish language, right? So there are no pros and cons. Sometimes there are no right and wrong, and there are no white and black. There are some gray areas, there are some nuanced areas which we really need to cater to, right? And if you are not following your opinion and not standing by upon it, so that's something again which will question on your writing skills, and not even writing skills, but of course the interpretation of law altogether, right? So it's always important to understand what you're writing on, and always it's not okay, it's okay to not choose a positive or negative side, but it's not okay to choose a side which you also don't believe in. So for example, I recently noticed one of the student just read one article about the oriented draft competition bill, and based opinion based on that first instance of that article. But there were multiple opinions that are do this law is required, multiple gray areas, problematic challenges in the industry. So this is something which really need to be coped up with. And in addition, sometimes we need to simplify things for publications. And in law firm, if you expect a partner to formulate an opinion, the particular partner, he or she is backed up by a team of 60 or at least 5 associates working for writing an article for and formulating an opinion. But for you, it will take time. And if you don't pursue your opinion, I think standalone, it's something which is problematic. And putting your thought process in the footsteps of the article, especially in a critically analytical way, rather descriptive, and not injecting, like not in a very generic sense, putting all your inputs is very, very important. And I always will say this, that if you are an author, you are the driver to the seat, and where you have to go, you decide. So that's something I will close my, and this I personally noticed, not something there could be a differences. So yeah, so pardon me for any different arguments. Yeah.
That is actually a very great statement. That brings us to the end of this session. Thank you, Akshat, for taking time out to join this discussion. Your insights were incredibly valuable, and I'm certain our audience will benefit greatly from the wisdom that you've shared. starting from their advice on selecting topics, choosing journals, and maintaining motivation in the face of challenges. Everything is going to help the aspiring law students and writers. On behalf of ILCC, I thank you once again. It was a great pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting me and doing such impeccable work. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Yeah.